everybody, Sally here. I started a project for myself because I spent all weekend organizing, reorganizing, cleaning my studio space, and it all looks nice and clean and pretty and organized, but I'm having a hard time finding things because at my age, when you move stuff, you forget where you put it. But that'll come. The more I use things from where they are now, the more I'll remember where they are. Anyways, I was watching some YouTube videos over the weekend, and Lindsay at the Frugal Crafter showed how to make these cute crisscross envelopes. And I've been looking for an idea, storage idea, for all my rubber stamps. I don't have a ton, but I have quite a few. And I've taken a lot of them off their wooden block to save on space, because those blocks take up so much room and they're hard to store. So I did that. I took them all off their wooden blocks, and I made these cute little envelopes like Lindsay showed, and put each stamp in its own envelope. So now I need some place to store the stamps in these little envelopes. But aren't they cute? So some of them are just slid down in their little acetate envelope, and some of them I left on the backing card with the acetate overlays on them to try and keep them clean. But they slide in and out really easy, and I'm really happy with this solution. So I just need some place where I can stand them all up so I can sort through when I want one and find what I'm looking for. So my good friend Jeff, long time ago, gave me a whole box of cigar boxes. Some were cardboard ones like we all know and use. This one, though, was a wooden one, and it's got a really cool, you see that graphic inside, which I'm going to keep. I'll probably age it, stain it, do something with it, and do something with the inside. But so this is where I'm at with this project so far. I just used book pages. I have lots of old books. So I just chose like 3 or 4 books that had different size texts, and some had like music or graphics or whatever. And I started actually with the top and just used 2 pieces for the top. Overlap the 2 pieces, not going quite, this edge is beveled off, so I didn't want to fight with trying to get it to stick down across the bevel. And since I know that I'm going to put more layers and paint and whatever on top, I just didn't worry about covering those beveled edges. And then I just opened it up and just started using smaller pieces in matte medium, brush it on, smoosh it down to cover the sides and the lip around the lid and the front. And then I just took this 2 book pages, they were facing pages in the book, the Fast Goat line, and I just ripped those into 3 pieces and used that for on the bottom. So that's where I'm at, and like I said, I just used matte medium, put it down over the surface first, and then put the paper down, brushed it on, and then brushed a layer of matte medium on top of the paper as well. When I was done with that and it was all dried, I took a sanding sponge, just one of these, and I used a fine grit, and I just went around the edges to knock off and bevel out the edges of the papers. And then I also went over the tops of all the paper to kind of bring back some of that tooth, so that I know when I go on top with paint or glaze or whatever I decide to do, it's going to have enough tooth to stick. Sometimes the matte medium leaves kind of a, it's matte, it's not gloss, it's the matte, but it still leaves kind of a, not shiny, but a more slippery surface. And I really like to work with a surface that has more tooth. So I just sanded lightly over everything, and it's real smooth. It feels really nice, and that's where I'm at with that. So these are the sanding sponges that I used. It's just a 3M. You get a fine, a super fine, and a medium in a pack. I got them from Amazon, but I used the fine. And this has been used before, so it's probably might even be more like super fine at this point, because it was used before this project. Okay, just a couple of things before I go on. I forgot to tell you about the initial prep. You don't have to do a lot, but if you're going to upcycle an older piece like this, a wooden box or even a metal box, clean it real good. I use crud cutter. Just wipe it down real good. You could use a solution of vinegar and water. It basically does the same thing. Just get it nice and clean. And then on this, I just gave it a light sanding because it did have a varnish on it, and I just wanted to rough up that varnish finish a little bit to give it a little more tooth so that my mediums would stick better. I wanted sure my papers would stick down well. So that's basically all I did. And then on the inside, I just went over the entire inside with matte medium. It's cedar, it's real porous. It was a little bit rough in some spots. So just to seal it really well and give it a little smoother texture in there, smoother finish, I just gave it a coat of matte medium. I'm going to start on the bottom because I'm not real sure how this is going to work, but I want to, this has the graphics where the top doesn't, but I'm just going to test on here, and I'm going to take one of my rubber stamps and some Archival ink. This is just some kind of little bit of text and some vintage elements. I'm trying to see if I can see what it's called. I don't see what it's called. It's by Prima. If I find the name of it on this package, I'll link it in the description below. Well, I'll put a list of all the supplies that I used for this down there as well, as usual. But I'm just going to ink this up. And this one, sometimes I get a good image out of it, and sometimes I don't. It's got like a lot of little dots and things on it, so. And I'm going to just go on the text here. I'm using a Dylusions Journal Block. And the ink should sink into the paper a little bit better since I sanded it off. Because I wasn't really going for, oh, let's see the image. I just really want a little more texture and interest on this page. I'm going to press really hard in that middle, but I'm not. Oh, there, we got it. The whole thing is there, which is good. And I think I'm just going to do this side, just one side of it, up here, and let it hang off the edge. I just wasn't pushing hard enough in the middle on it before. There, that's a good one. Okay. Then I'm going to use this one that's just lines. This is also a Prima stamp. Just lines for texture. Again, I'm not seeing the name of what it is. I'm gonna just go light on this because we'll see what happens. I say I'm gonna go light, and then sometimes you just don't know what you're gonna get. Let's do this. I'll try to keep my head out of the shot. There, that's pretty good. And I'm not gonna re-ink. I'm just gonna go down here and see if I can't get a little bit of ghosting off of it down here. A little bit. Now I could take this and go the other way, and maybe I'll do that right here. The lines will crisscross and you get a little bit of a, or not. a little bit of a plaid right in there. I'm going to take it off of here and just go right there with it, just for giggles. Alright. Decent images. Kind of what I was going for, just to grunge it up a little bit. I'm going to use some paint on top of this, some transparent paint, when the ink is good and dry. So I'm going to go ahead and get some stamped images on the rest of it, and I'll be back. All the sides have been stamped. On the top, I just use only the stamps with the irregular lines going this way, and then without re-inking I went back the other way just to get a little more color but not real distinct lines. And then on all the sides I just randomly stamped, just basically to just get a little interest on top of those. Ready for the next step. So I think I'm going to use Quinacridone Nickel Azo Gold. This is a golden high flow acrylic, and I've just put some in a little container, and I'm going to give it a spritz of water just to water it down. I'm just going to go over the whole thing because I like this color. Once I get this on the top, then I'm gonna, oh yeah, I guess I could have mixed up some more of that. That's okay, easy enough to do. I'm just gonna do this top part first, this lid first, and just go around the edges. Where that wood is, it should just kind of soak into the wood. And I'm gonna have it a little heavier in some areas and brushed out a little more in others. And I'm going to give it just a couple of seconds to sort of sink in. I'm going to run my finger around this edge here so I don't have drips. And then I'm just going to take my roll of paper towels and I'm going to roll over it. La-da! So you see the imprint from the paper towels. Fortunately I had something that had a pretty pattern in it, but it's just faintly impressed into that area. So I'm going to dry this top so I can work with it and turn it and do the sides. All the sides are done with the high flow acrylic and water solution, and then went over it with the paper towels to get that little bit of texture in there. I'm just going to do the whole inside to bring those colors from the outside to the inside. So I went over the paper label and then took a baby wipe and just dabbed at it to get this texture. But these edges, when I would go like this, they just felt a little bit sticky, and I didn't want to close the box and have it stick together, which, you know, is kind of par for the course for me. So I took the a sanding block and just went over the edges until they didn't feel sticky anymore. They just feel nice and smooth. It didn't take all the color off, so I think I'm safe to close the box and continue on. I've decided that I'm just going to use this mini chicken wire stencil and some modeling paste and just add a little more texture on top of here. And I have some baby wipes handy because if I hate it, I'm going to go wipe it off real quick, but we'll see what it does. Just going for kind of some irregular edges here as I get to the outside of the stencil. It's all good. And this texture paste that I'm using is really old, so it's kind of sticky, but I think it'll still work alright. I just want to smooth that out a little more, and then I'll clean up the edges. Oh yeah, I think that's going to be good. Alright, so my stencil back, and I'm going to, I think, just a little bit more, maybe right there. Yeah, I'm going to like that. And I just have a baby wipe, that's all I'm using to clean up these edges here. A palette knife. Just get that off the edge. This is going to take some time to dry, so I'll be back and we'll go from there.